Yeah.
Hi, Elizabeth, this is Sean Kirkpatrick. I'm just doing a sound check with the room. Can you hear us? John, are you there? Can you hear the room? Perfect. Thank you for confirming.
Next week. Yeah.
It's in, yeah,
Throughout the day?
yeah.
Bags.
Okay, Mayor.
Shelley with us?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, there she
There she
is.
is.
Awesome.
Michelle.
All right, I will call the special committee of the whole meeting to order for Tuesday, April 4th. Attendance is all but Natalie. She has another meeting. I need to adopt the agenda. Really? Just because Mike's got his mouth full.
Oh, mine is sort of full.
Go ahead, too. We're at it all the time for.
Sorry.
It's on screen.
Okay, moved by myself that the April 4th, 2023 agenda be adopted as presented.
Awesome. All those in favor? I think that's unanimous and Shelley's good. And then first and only item on the agenda is new business. And there is a motion coming out of this just for information, right? Okay. All right. Amanda is said to be leading this show.
Just a brief intro just to lead off. Thanks very much for having us today. We're here to kind of regroup with council on a discussion around the concept plan for Millennium Park. So today we have Amanda Wild, who's going to facilitate a conversation, have some discussion. We've got some activity as well. We'll walk through with you this afternoon. We also have a number of staff here that we have Tim from Capital Projects, Craig's with us from Community Recreation. We have Melissa from Environment, myself and Adrian Slack from Planning. So we're here to answer any questions that you have. Oh, well, Marta's always any questions. Marta can tell you all about stuff. And Marta too. Marta's with us as well. So if you have any questions, we're here to answer all your questions today and walk you through the exercise. With that, I'll turn it over to Amanda.
All of you guys. Hey, go Amanda.
All right. We're going to pretend I remember how to use Zoom. That's not the right button. No. It is snowing. Well, thank you, members of council, for allowing me to present today on the Millennium Park concept plan. We do plan on walking you through just a series of facilitated discussions using a couple of different tools. We do have maps on the wall here for those in the room. We do also have 3D models behind me to give you a sense of scope and scale and what's possible within the site. We'd encourage you to get up and have a look at that whenever makes sense in the conversation. Respect for the people online. We won't have a dedicated activity that is in the room. We'll do everything online, but feel free to jump up and test ideas and play with the kit behind us as makes sense to you. So we do have, as I mentioned, a series of conversations we'd like to have with you today. The first around kind of the desired budget and how the current project charter aligns to council's expectations. Providing just a brief overview. We know you're well familiar with the site, but the context and constraints around Millennium Park. Have a discussion around the outcomes that we're looking from the park, entities and site features that are currently planned or may be desired on the site. Talk about public engagement and what that could look like going forward. Phasing and timing for the project, as well as next steps. So, a really high level nutshell, that's what we'll go over today. Just to give you some kind of forewarning or some forethought on what we're going to be discussing with you, the questions that administration has come up with to ask around the budget. What is the appropriate investment for the site? What outcomes should the project meet? What does spectacular mean to you? And that's the language out of the downtown area redevelopment plan. What design elements should be changed, if any? What is the expectation for public engagement moving forward? What timing and phasing best meets expectations for project delivery over what we're planning now and what could be changed? And then talk about the next steps and council's expectations for participation moving forward. And I would ask if council would like to ask any questions. If you have any clarification you need, please just interrupt me at any time. I get a little focused on the screen, so just interrupt me as you wish.
Presentation, and are you going to come back to those questions? Okay.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, we're trying not to have me talk at you the whole time and receive more feedback. Anything else? So we'll start off a little bit with the budget. So the original kind of estimated budget through the DART process for the project was approximately $25 million. As planning moved through the project through the first phase of conceptual design, there was a recognition that financial constraints should come into it a little bit. So the budget was reduced to approximately $10 million. The current project charter is $15.8 million. That is largely due to escalation and an increase in the contingency for conceptual level plans that was implemented corporately last year. And that's really to deal with the unknowns around construction inflationary costs. So as you can see, we broke it down a little bit more finally for you, just to give a sense of where those dollars are allocated. Design for a project like this is about 1.2 million. Public participation, should it continue, approximately 80,000. Site servicing is a major cost component because there are certain services that aren't available to the property line, power in particular. Landscaping, which includes the water and ice features, just shy of 2 million. The building itself, or the pavilion building, is approximately 6.8 million. And again, that 50% contingency based on the level of completion of the project to date is 5.2 million, totaling to that $50 million.
So the major component is the building.
So with that really, we know you're very familiar with the project. We thought it would be really good to say the current design spends $15.8 million in the way that it does. Is that the appropriate investment from council's view? Should it be less? Should it be more? Because budget really does drive what we're able to do with this site. So from that, we'll just open the question to the members of council is, are we at the right level? Does it need to be higher, lower? What does that look like for council?
Mike?
Well,
I didn't mean to put you in a spot, but if you're ready, I was gonna go.
yeah, I know. I guess when I see the breakdown of the numbers, I would say yes, $6 million for that type of building might feel high to me, but I'm always surprised how expensive construction projects are. I'll be honest.
Do you have more details of what the actual building in the presentation?
We do have some breakdown of what the interior looks like and approximately what's allocated where for space.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm envisioning just something like Red Willow Park, but hopefully it's more than that.
Yeah, I mean, I understand when I read backgrounder, it's got kitchens, it's got a curvilinear shape, it's got closed in washrooms, they're accessible. And so when I look back through the documentation, I had a fairly good understanding of the building, and I guess I'm always surprised that construction costs for those kind of things are so high. But per glass and heating and all of those things, I understand. So
you're good.
yeah.
I shouldn't put everyone on the spot. If you have something to say, then.
Oh, no. The only thing that I would say is that if I was to save money anywhere, it would be on the splash park water feature that, and I've said this numerous times. I think that community-based kind of splash parks are better. I don't see that being a big draw to bring people to this location. And when we're trying to save water, we're trying to restrict water usage to have a non-recirculating water feature where it just sprays out and goes down the drain doesn't seem environmentally friendly to me. So if anywhere to look at saving money, that's where I would look.
I could clarify, Councillor, this is priced, I believe, on a recirculating system, not a non-recirculating system.
Oh,
Which is significantly more expensive.
Okay.
Better for the environment. Water usage.
In the original plan, it said that wasn't part of it.
Yeah, it has both options, and I believe the cost is based. But we can confirm for you.
Okay, I thought the preferred. Okay,
Wes and then Shelley.
amended.
Well, from my perspective, this is what was sort of authorized in the past. And my interpretation of why we're here today is to make sure that council is okay with what's going on. I wasn't prepared to sort of go back and say, I'd really like to spend, $30 million or $50 million. Because spectacular, I'm not sure you buy spectacular for 15 million, but you buy pretty good 15 million. But if you're going to use words like spectacular, I'm not sure that's what the community has brought to us through our public participation. So my my interpretation is that we work with the budget that's we've already identified. And that we come up with a plan that all of our current council can live with and then move on. That's my personal opinion.
Shelley?
I had a few comments related to the ice and water feature because it shows up on this, document here that it's 1,900,000. And in the other information that was provided, it was 2.5 million just for the water and ice feature, and the landscaping was priced separately. So again, I'm agreeing with Councillor Killick that the ice and water feature was not even in any of the public surveys that I saw. It wasn't something that people in the surveys even asked for. They wanted more of a meeting entertainment space. So again, when we go to price, we all, of course, just want the best value for what we want. And I, for one, don't see value in $2 million for a small little ice patch and water area either. So that's kind of the blocking point for me in the whole plan. I'd like to see more event space there.
Yeah, thank you. And I can speak to Councillor Bermansky, the discrepancy. The technical report was prepared by O2 Dialogue Partners, in 2018, Adrian? Costin?
17.
In 2020, we took it internally because some of the cost felt high. And we worked with our CPO partners to recost the plan. So it is actually lower than what was shared in the technical report and then escalated up from the numbers. So that's where that discrepancy is, Councillor Bermansky. And that 1.9 million is all landscaping. So that's trees, trails, all of that, not just the water feature. So it's a combination of costs.
Good.
What portion of that would be water feature in your 1.9 estimate here?
I can take that back and have a look. I'm sorry, I don't have the document open right now.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have I'm not shocked with the numbers based on what they are, considering that we're still looking at a 50% contingency. That's pretty high. I mean, that's standard for what we're looking at right now. That can, as we know, that's kind of where we are when we scope out these things. But are we going to later on, or is there going to be more detail in relation to, so for example, the building, there's potential to generate revenue from that. And it could be a revenue generator in the sense that if you rent it out, one of the things that we continue to lack around here is a space that could host events in that, 100, 150 to 300 range, potentially. And I'm not saying that that's what we're getting with the building and what it was initially scoped out as, but I mean, is there a possibility that there's revenue opportunities with this, particularly if you kind of tie it into the proximity with Red Willow Place?
Yeah, I can speak to a little bit, and maybe Adrian would like to jump in as well. The original concept did have some leasable space, some event space that flexed indoor, outdoor, that would enable performances and things like that, and that could potentially be rented. So it does have a small potential for revenue. It won't fully offset likely the operating costs.
No, I didn't think it was going to be a moneymaker. No. I wouldn't want a public space necessarily just to be marketed as a moneymaker, but I mean, I'm not shocked at the prices. And
So just to add, Councillor McKay, we also look at advertising and sponsorship opportunities as well as they themselves when we facility developments. There's opportunities potentially there as well for some revenue generation.
yeah, no, all those things, as long as, I was just wondering if if there was already that as part of this presentation, or is just anticipated that those are opportunities that will be coming later on as this project rolls out.
Honestly, do you have anything?
No.
Good.
Well, just when I look at this building, I don't see it worth $6 million. Like, I just don't see the value. I see how it costs $6 million. I just don't see the value of $6 million. And I also don't see the value in the refrigerated outdoor rink as it stands right now either. So, I mean, more than half the cost of this is those two elements. And I also don't see the cost to hook up the water in the estimates. The water sewer, I don't like.
Site servicing.
Well, I see electrical and I see the other thing. I like mechanical and electrical. I don't see water in here. So if it's in there somewhere, I just don't see it, but it's not listed certain as item. unless it's mechanical, I don't know. So so my concern, if you ask me the budget, I can't tell you the budget because I want to go through the design and then we'll figure out what the budget ends up being. And then we'll see if we still want to justify it. But I can't just tell you spend 7 million or spend 15. We're trying to look at the design. That's all that.
And my thoughts, but we weren't talking budget today.
No, we're
This
talking
is an
design.
approved budget,
Yeah.
right? Like, so let's just skip past that.
Yeah. Oh,
Because
I think the idea was to figure out what the appetite was
Yeah.
based on.
my thoughts though, a little bit about the water feature, if it's a small little splash park, like just a surface with water squirting up. Smallish, but I think it's important because although this is supposed to be a gathering space for community events, when there is no community event, we need to draw down. So want moms with their strollers and their picnic baskets come down there and sit on the grass and let their kids have something. There's not going to be any playground equipment. And I want it to be all season. So, you know, whether it's a whole rink or a freezeway with bonfire pits. Bonfire pits would be nice in the winter, honestly, but that, as long as it's all season, I'm good. And the budget's fine. Okay, let's go on.
Go on. So I did want to kind of paint a little bit of a picture, because Millennium Park is central to how downtown operates, but it is certainly one piece of the entirety of downtown and the vision of DARP to make downtown an exciting, vibrant place where residents, visitors, businesses, and government come together. It's a place to shop, celebrate history and the arts, and enjoy outstanding events and entertainment. And you can certainly see how Millennium Place contributes to all of those things in different ways. Millennium Park, sorry. But also there are a lot of other things going on that we wanted to just kind of highlight as Millennium Park as a piece of everything else that is going on downtown. Obviously, the work around the downtown area redevelopment plan and the prioritization there is really important. We also see significant opportunity to treat the downtown park system as a downtown park system. So cohesive spaces that are planned well that support events across the two main spaces being Lions Park and Millennium Park. So we see lots of opportunity to make sure that downtown acts like a cohesive event space where we have the St. Albert Plaza. DARP has the Civic Plaza project in there. So making sure that just everything fits into one puzzle piece and knowing that as Millennium Park really is that connector piece between all of those spaces, just making sure there's a really good cohesion and an understanding that this park in and of itself doesn't do everything we might want it to do, but when combined with the complexity of downtown spaces and the opportunities we have as a downtown as a whole, and especially around the St. Albert Place Millennium Lions corridor, there's significant opportunities. So we just wanted to highlight the fact that it's just one piece. Some other things that we wanted to highlight today to talk about influence that may influence how we want to proceed or may be influenced by how we proceed on Millennium Park include the downtown stakeholder coordination work that's currently going and potentially some interest from our business community with the business improvement area, the work of Fire Hall 1 and the potential to change the use of that one piece of Grenadier Park, the potential really positive tie-ins with the 22 St. Thomas project, as well as the influence of our current residents and businesses that live and work downtown. So just highlighting all of these different opportunities that are going to be able to use this space and should be considered as we move forward. And then not least of all, obviously, the existing events. So Lions Park is our premier park for events. But Millennium Park will be able to take some of the heavy use of that, but they'll also be able to complement each other and really work as one cohesive event space. Especially for our larger events like Children's Fest. So really exciting opportunities and just really want to be cognizant that we have that bigger lens on the downtown as we move forward in this project. Then we get to add on, which is really exciting for us, the arts, cultural and heritage interpretation that's kind of already in the mix. And we get to kind of align all of these projects together. So we have the Heritage Walk project, formerly called the Founders Walk project, where there's specific plans that address Children's Bridge. There's a little bit of interpretation opportunity with Millennium Park, interpretation opportunity with Lions Park as well, potential to tie in the work that's going into refurbish Children's Bridge and getting that all aligned and everybody working in a cohesive fashion. The ability to integrate or put public art in this new space is really exciting. As well as events. And then figuring out how to tie in Red Willow Place. It's a bit of an interesting piece because Red Willow Place wasn't envisioned to exist in Darb. It's going to be removed and moved, and now it's become kind of a central gathering place for seniors. So how does that influence the design now that we know that's there to stay? And that may not have been as carefully considered in the first round because Darb contemplated removing it. So some exciting opportunity to talk about how the building and the space between Lions and Millennium and Red Willow Place really work together and support that use that wasn't contemplated by Darb. And we get to talk about the not so fun stuff with this site. So this site exists protected by a flood berm. And it's really, really important that unless we have a really, really good reason to do it, we don't touch the flood berm. So that berm is in this kind of blank corridor here along the trail. So to the north of the berm is the floodplain. It doesn't mean we can't act within the floodplain, but what it does imply is a significant level of approvals, a significant level of scrutiny on anything we might want to put in that area, which can delay projects. It can add cost and can still be refused by the province. So it's a really strong awareness we have that anything within that dark blue area, we need to be very cautious of and really certain we absolutely need, because it does add complexity and risk into the project. The blue striped area, no, just this, just the strip on the north side of the river, the trail, sorry.
On that side there.
Yeah, just the dark blue blob along the river. Yeah. So this area here is an awareness. If we were to look at this site in a 1 in 200 year flood event, it will flood. So almost all of Millennium Park will flood. It is protected by flood berm, and Adrian can speak to this if he wants to clarify anything. But that flood berm does allow us to develop the park, but it is awareness there that it has probably historically flooded. The soils are probably a little bit wetter than we'd experience in other areas. And it is just an awareness from an emergency services and a building design perspective that it's going to be a little bit more expensive to probably build the building because it is in a floodplain area. It is protected. And in a normal development scenario, it will be fine, but it is an awareness that if we do experience a severe flood event, there's really high likelihood it will flood.
So those costs have already been built in, as you said.
Yeah, we have assumed it will be a pile construction, but Adrian, do you want to add anything to this?
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm putting you on the spot.
No, I don't.
there's a lot to talk about, but I guess just at a high level, yeah, so when we talked about the expense of this, I think that part of what you're seeing is the fact that we acknowledge that that soil down there is horrible to build on, and I shouldn't say that, challenging to build on. And we're going to need to do some advanced building techniques in order to make sure that everything is durable and up to code. So from that side of things, that's part of the costing. And as Amanda said, it's all built in that floodplain. When we built the St. Anne Promenade, there was quite a lot of discussion about how we would actually engineer the road base in such a fashion that it could support the weight of the asphalt. So even up that far, it's still like that soil is something that we have to consider when we're building. So we know that that's a component. The floodplain issue, I probably will be to council before the break with floodplain amendments. So this is the new draft flood map from the province, and that area, as Amanda said, it would be flooded except for the berm. The berm is there, so we're good. In a 1 to 200 year event, it would connect down by the rail trestle and would flow all the way up to provincial building. That's a 1 and it's a 0.5% chance flood. And we know with climate change, that chance will increase. So we've talked with engineering, public works, with utilities about modifying the trail there so that we can make the trail at the northwest corner of Lions be effectively the berm that keeps that water out, even should floodwaters rise to that extent. So we're talking about, I think it has to raise up around a foot or something like that. It's not a huge amount, so we can design that in, and then that area is protected. So again, everything that was on the table before is still on the table. We just have to engineer some things. And then and we'll talk about the sensitivity of the site, et cetera, but I just didn't want to scare anybody off with the.
Well, as long as I said, you built some of those anticipated costs
piling into what we saw already. That would be
It
good.
should be factored in.
That is why you're gonna see slightly elevated construction costs compared to what you may be expecting. In part because it has the potential to be challenging to construct within.
Why is this grass part not part of your Millennium Park? Like, it is like this green, like you have it slashed out when you identified it, but it's not
That's
That's the flood
So
area.
that's the map that shows the
flood area.
absent the trail that would flood in the 1 to 100.
Right.
And it will flood in the 200 unless we fix the northwest corner lines.
I see. That's not option one. Okay.
Does anybody remember how many piles this building's sitting on?
It's hundreds, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For
I
that,
mean, even the healing garden is built on
Yeah.
a number.
it totally escalated the cost.
Yeah, I do.
My house is sitting on 1,000 piles because it's right on the river.
So not to scare anyone, or it's just to contextualize cost and that it is going to be a consideration moving forward. We definitely have built in the floodplain before. Probably will again, but it's just awareness that that is a constraint and something that will be front of mind as we move forward. We've already been reached out by our emergency service saying, if we build this, what does the flood response plan look like? Because it might need to be a little bit different for this area, same as it is for the courthouse and portions of St. Albert. So a little bit about the vegetation. So you can see down here, this is an aerial photo from 1924. So you can see historically, this has been a really heavily vegetated site. This is its current conditions. We do know that there are some wetlands on the site. They haven't been formally mapped yet, but they do exist kind of in this area here. As we mentioned before, this is a floodplain area. We do expect wet soils and many piles, probably. And again, just that consideration of anything that we build within the floodplain has that extensive approvals and potential rejection from the province. And anything that we do put in that kind of zone we do have to consider the impacts downstream in a flood event. And if we put infrastructure in the floodplain, what are the risks that we're introducing downstream as well? So it's not just contained to this site. So you can see here just how heavily vegetated it is. It is considered a significant natural area within our natural areas management plan. So it does have significant value from a wildlife movement perspective. And just on the image on the right here is just to show you the planned tree removal in the current concept plan. To give you some context, it nets about a 10% tree loss in the current concept plan. The combination of removal of natural tree stands and replacement with ornamental to create that Esplanade trail that is envisioned. But we just really wanted to highlight that this site does have value from a wildlife movement perspective, from a riparian habitat perspective, and that value does need to be considered as we move forward in this project.
The green is what? And blue there.
So the blue would be complete loss for trail in this case, in the way it's currently designed. And the green would be a replacement with that kind of esplanade, the big canopy tree, more ornamental plantings as currently envisioned.
So when we did our walking tour at the beginning of the term, I thought I heard that those trees were of little value.
Yeah, so the current report that we have, which is a preliminary report, I think we've mentioned before, we need to do a tree assessment, there is no significant value trees. That being said, of course, every bit of canopy has value.
Yeah, I get that.
And every bit of habitat has value. So it's low value trees in terms of how rare they are, how big they are, those kinds of things. There are potentially some higher value trees, but they're more the ornamental spruce that are long. That would be fairly easy to retain.
Sorry, go ahead. But what's the point of planting trees in that green area when there's trees right behind it?
Yeah, so I can speak a little bit to the design intent. I wasn't part of the project, unfortunately. It was to create that high arching canopy. So when you drove down White Avenue and they had those big areas where you just drive through the tunnel of trees, and that was kind of the concept that was developed at the time, to have that really kind of tunneled feeling, which you can't really achieve with species that naturally would grow in this site.
So, Melissa. Yes. I think this is the whole point of why we're here today, is to try to see how we can not have chopped up smaller parks and open it up to the river, which was key. And if you can't do it, you can't do it. But to me, then I don't care about the park. I don't want to spend $15 million if I can't open it up to the river. So help me figure out how we can maybe keep some of those ornamental spruces, because you want to have some trees, but we need the visual access. It needs to be bigger.
When you say open it up, like you mean open the site wider, or you're saying
Sorry,
like
the visual, the
sight lines to the river?
Thank you for that correction, because I obviously wasn't very clear, but yeah, it's just, so when you're sitting, listening to a concert. On their bikes and I don't think we have to get rid of every tree, like especially if there's some high value spruce trees in there, keep those, but this is the crux of why we're here today, I think.
It is a cutoff riparian area, so, it's gonna have groundwater connection to the river. How ornamental trees will do there in those soil conditions is another issue. This was kind of our compromise with the original design, that the original thought was to cut everything down and make a big wide open space. This was kind of the compromise to keep a mix of ornamentals and some of that natural riparian vegetation. From a flood risk perspective, it all has to be considered.
Like I can, and I'm not an engineer, but I can still see keeping the berm and the ditch that drains, but those things are below your site level. Like, can you just do bushes instead of trees? And like, Mike, help.
I'm in the, so when I brought this forward as a opportunity to have a discussion, it was really around kind of growing to 100,000, getting a bigger gathering area. So that little quarter of the land there actually available for grass, or, we've already laid clay down on top of that. That to me for $15 million just seemed too small. It just, I would echo the mayor's comments that if it was $15 million and that was all we were going to develop, it wouldn't make sense to me. So I had envisioned kind of the idea of pushing that further back, opening it up to the river, relocating the building further closer to the rivers. I like the orientation because it does, protect from the wind. But when I saw the concept plan saying this is where the building's going to go and the plumbing and water lines and power, like, whoa, that just wasn't a big enough open area to really have major outdoor concert, like, bringing in I don't know, old rock band, name band kind of thing, and having a really good outdoor concert. And my observation of the outdoor concert that we have in front of St. Albert Place, they sell out, it's a very confined area. This to me would be an opportunity just to open it up. And for sight lines to the river, we say the river is one of our most significant values in the city. Open it up to the Children's Bridge. It's an architectural feature. Open it up to Lions Park so that we don't have this all kind of segmented. I'm okay with that pathway through to City Hall. Personally, I would like to see it wider. Thinking of farmers market, what are the two big things that draw people down already? Giving more space maybe to vendor tents during farmers market, outdoor concerts in the summertime, larger clean surface for children's festival. All of those things require a bigger footprint of kind of open grass space. So I'm trying to figure that we're just going to, if the rationale is we have to save trees, and I sit on the environmental committee and I'm as committed to the environment as anybody in this room. I just don't I see we need to make a trade-off here between how we serve our residents, spend that money and get the biggest bang for our buck. Oh,
Certainly, and we do have some conversation about exactly this, just coming up in a little bit. Or we can.
Okay, I was also, I mean, we're talking about the sidelines of the river, but this is huge. Completely unusable. Just can't walk through it the way it is right now. Like, why would we invest $15 million in this? That's what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, so, and I think Councillor Killick, that was kind of the point that we were just trying to share is you can absolutely do a lot with this site, but there are trade-offs and there are costs to doing some of the things that you may want. So we just wanted to make sure that you had all the information. If that's the direction you want to go as a council or recommend from Scout to council, that we can do that, but we just wanted to make sure that you were very well informed of the trade-offs that we'd be making to do so.
yeah.
So what would be, sorry, man.
My fault.
So I mean, what would be, what's technically required? That's a lot of trees you'd have to remove. I mean, and I realize that some of them are willow and low grade, but there's that's a significant amount of trees, whether you to the left or to the right of the path. I mean, I don't know.
I would just say to Councillor Mackay, we did targeted logging and tree removal and Grey Nuns with the horses and low impact. And we took out a lot of the, what would have been maybe invasive species at the time.
But you wouldn't see the same impact as if you were selective. A lot of those trees are in a pretty high water table area. A lot of them are doing a job that nature has for them. I mean, if you look at that picture way back when in 1984, when they actually built the berm and built St. Albert Place, you can see, boy, it looks fantastic. We got grass right down to the river. It's all clean. It looks beautiful, but it's not nature. So I'm just saying, I'm not saying we don't compromise, but I can't see clear cutting to the river. And I know you're not saying that, but I just cannot. I wouldn't share that vision, but no, I'm not. I mean, I'm that's a lot of trees, particularly by the courthouse. I know you say that's not worth anything, but I don't know. The courthouse, you'd have to leave a strip in there to protect off from the building.
That area could be still very treed, but with there's different kinds of trees too, right? There's pine trees that are wide at the bottom, but there's deciduous that have more trunks so you can have a picnic table under it.
Yeah.
You can walk through it and there's still a canopy over your head.
Use the space.
That would mean planting more trees. I get that.
Wow.
What's the life expectancy for the majority of these trees? Because they've been around for a while. They don't live forever. How much longer do you think we got on them for the average life expectancy?
I'll ask Melissa in a second, but it's not a monoclonal or a single age tree stand. It is a historic one. So
yeah, some of them are 1 year old, some of them are 30 years.
Yeah, but Melissa, do you want to add?
They're replanting and reseeding. And, yeah.
Spruce especially have a very long lifespan.
Yeah.
A lot of the old cottonwood poplars that are in there, I imagine, are pretty close to end of life.
Probably, but aspens, they sucker. So they just,
Yeah.
But they do definitely serve a very important purpose to them.
Yeah.
So it's certainly possible to open it up to provide a different type of mix, a different canopy composition. That obviously comes with costs because you've got to remove, and there's a time lag that comes in there because we can't plant very mature trees. So there is some impacts that way, even from a public use. It's not going to look maybe as you're envisioning right away.
Yeah.
It is certainly possible. In terms of, to Councillor Mackay's question around what's possible, one thing that we haven't done that we'd really like to do before we make any kind of final decisions is do some more geotechnical, because the soil conditions will really dictate whether things are going to be successful in what we're envisioning, or whether what's growing there grows there, and that's about as good as we're going to get. So we would do some more geotechnical investigation into some of those areas to see, because if it's particularly wet, that can be really challenging to program. or to turn to turf or things like that. So we would need some more information before coming to like a really concrete tree removal.
That's part of the 300 that we've got in the budget this year. Okay.
Isn't it partly to say that prior to the berm, I mean, we've orphaned that site off because of the berm. And I mean, you can say, well, okay, the damage is done and you can, but I would need all of that information before I would go in there and start. Because I mean, what did they say? The whole, City Hall's built on peat moss and loon manure. You know, and so I wouldn't doubt that I wouldn't imagine that that's not much different in that whole area.
Yes, we would want to have a look at that because it will limit or change what we would recommend based on what the soil conditions look like.
But I would say that indicates me that something is doable.
Yeah.
If we can build City Hall on 1 million piles.
600 piles.
600 piles on loon poop, then I think we can build
Yeah, but
it.
that was in 1984 with a totally different environmental.
I'm just saying that, to me, that
Yeah.
it's an indicator that something can be done
I would
if
think
creative
anything
minds.
can be done.
Yeah.
And I think that the point of this is just to frame out the realities of it, more expensive. And it's, especially if you start mess with the environmental component of it, it's
Yep.
labor intensive in terms of the approvals. None of those things are meant to scare anybody off, but those are the realities, right?
Yep.
Not simple.
We don't have to decide anything today. Honestly,
No, we're trying to get some broad guidance.
to us,
Yeah, no.
hear why we were somewhat concerned about this big investment and not getting a bigger bang. And it's that river, it's the chopped up, but what I don't want to do is have this stalled. Right? I don't want to have to get a new project charter. I don't want to have to do more public engagement. I know that's a question coming up later. Like, let's just hear what our concerns are, and then hopefully we can just move forward. And then I know there's a question about should the concept plan come up? Maybe that's where we up the budget and maybe bring us a few choices or something.
Absolutely. So just a few other things just to be mindful of and things that are front of mind for us is the size of the site. And that's kind of part of why we have the 3D kit back here, is just to give you a sense of it's technically 3.5 hectares, but because of that flood berm and the existing trail, the functional size is approximately 2.5 hectares. So it is smaller than it looks on paper in some ways. There is storm infrastructure. So there is a north-south trail that kind of cuts the site off about 2/3 of the way to the west. There's storm infrastructure underneath that. So it is a limitation on crossing that or building anything over top of it to be aware of. And there's an outfall at the end of that storm pipe. So just something to be aware of. The vehicle access is what it is. So we're not really assessing any roadway changes or anything like that. And that parking improvements are unlikely within scope of this project and unlikely to be necessary, which is why we're just bringing it forward and saying, hey, we're not going to come to you with a parkade or anything like that. But it's a consideration in the outcomes. If you're trying to draw 10,000 people, we have to acknowledge that you may need to look at alternative ways to get people there because we're not going to look at parking improvements specifically.
Right on the trail system.
It's just bringing it up. Not going to comment on that one.
You have to double up.
Ain't no doubling.
So just a reminder of the original vision from the Millennium Park concept plan. So Millennium Park, as a major park in the public heart of St. Albert, is vibrant and welcoming place that integrates natural ecology, history, culture, and for a variety of dynamic uses. The site connects open space across the broader city, creating a destination to gather and celebrate for the community. So this is kind of the culmination of all the work that was done during the conceptual plan phase. And it really speaks to all of those elements that have come up in the constraints and context around being a puzzle piece of downtown, around the natural environment and recognizing the importance of the site from that perspective. Obviously, being in the heart of downtown, it has a lot of history and culture and things that we can discover and interpret for the public around the site as well, which is quite exciting. And then really that last sentence, it is a destination to gather and celebrate. So a couple of key outcomes that influence the design there. Some principles, I'm not going to read them aloud, but this is just from the original plan to kind of remind people how they got to where they got to with the conceptual plan. So vibrant in all seasons and for all ages, which was important. Balanced approach to preservation of trees. considering the needs of all users, and I kind of like the last one the best, develop a character for the park that is unique, bold, and attractive. So really carrying through that idea that this is a piece of downtown, but needs to be something that's really something we can stand behind, attractive to people. So from there, I do have a bit of a, of course,
To my council colleagues, if you go back to that particular,
sorry. That one.
so your concern is that, no, to the map, if you don't mind. When you say open it up to the river, what you mean is you take out those trees there so that people can see? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all. And same to the right. Towards the.
But those don't have to be 80-foot tall trees. Those could be.
Be bushes, it could be spread out more, put a picnic table under them. Like, that's all we're talking about. That's honestly all we're talking about.
I do have an exercise to help us kind of frame out
Okay.
what's important and what needs to change.
Sorry, the way it looks aerially, it does look sectioned off. If you could tell me it's not sectioned off from the ground level, then I'll be. Go ahead, Sheena.
Because the trees are going in this, looks like there's grass. Is that a light green actually trees though? And I'm missing it?
So the light green is
Grass.
turf, yeah. And then the bobby green, sorry, for lack of a better word, is the existing tree stand. And the circles are the ornamental trees.
Okay, what is this? What is the existing tree stand? Sorry, I missed the middle one.
This green is mid-color green.
That's the, okay, that's the medium. That's the trees. Those are still trees.
Yeah. Yeah, they're just showing the existing natural tree stands kind of as they are.
It looks grassy to me.
Yeah, actually, now that you say that, I'm like, oh, God, that's not good.
And Matt, the little hashed line there, that's the kind of ravine area. So again, my vision of this would be to open it all the way up. And I don't know, that little gully there, that's maybe where some trees could start. We could even, landscape it to make it a feature.
Could it be a bioswale?
It's
You know what a bioswale is?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Natural, again, natural development to, do that water filtration role and environmentally sensitive. So, but it just, when I look at that whole thing, it just looks like such a little teeny piece of the land is being developed and not worth $15 million investment.
So I think if I could take away from that broad-based, increasing sightlines to the river and ultimately increasing some of the usable space in the process, right? Or usable. Broadly, right? I mean, that's.
Just gonna pull up, we do have a couple of questions for you. We have heard from individuals that, this isn't quite spectacular enough, borrowing a word from DARP. It's not quite hitting the mark. So we really do want to focus on what are the outcomes that council wants this site to meet? Because those can have huge influences on how we design. So we've talked about the water ice feature. And you can see in the principles how.
Let's sit over here.
The water ice feature is meant to help with the all ages, all seasons opportunities for play, but that might not be the right outcome any longer. So we do want to have just a conversation about really what does spectacular mean to council. Bring this.
So I'll give it a
Can you
shot here.
for 1 second, please?
Yeah.
I'm typing to Amanda.
Hold spectacular for a minute.
There we go. And should it? And I think that's a valid conversation. Is spectacular still the goal?
Go ahead, Mike.
I'm going to type furiously on here.
Ken has just thrown me a curveball that I totally lost my thought. So it spectacular to me is about the events that can be held there. It's not about the space itself. It's about making the space big enough to hold spectacular events. And I would say again, to have like, I don't know, a powwow would take an Indigenous powwow would take a much bigger space than we have there. If we were to bring in, when the Oilers win the cup and we want to have a big signing here in a couple of months, how many people would we get downtown to that park? All of it's the events that will make it spectacular. I'm not looking for a Ferris wheel or a zip line or a, whatever. I'm imagining when we host our fireworks, that there's 2,000 people or whatever, I don't know what the number would be, but would be gathered there, and we could say, hey, come down, bring your blankets, sit on the grass. The fireworks are going to be launched from the ballpark across the street or across the river, and it's going to be a great viewing area. It'll be spectacular, right?
The animation of the space, like how we would animate it, how we would use it, that makes it spectacular for you?
Yeah, but the space itself has to be big enough to, and again, I'm looking at 100,000. That's kind of stuck in my head. I don't want to develop this and then find it's too small for our future vision. So I'm looking at all of those things to, I would, we're always looking for a hook for the city to say well, somebody gave me an example, we're the quilting capital of Canada or something. That was
Somewhere else was.
it was somewhere else. Yeah. But we've got these things. I would love to see our children's festival say it's the biggest, it's spectacular, or our farmers market could be extended in that area and it's spectacular. And we could have Oktoberfest of, the biggest papa band and beer tent, right?
I knew beer would come out.
So, but I hope that's being helpful, because it's not the building, it's what we do with it will make it spectacular.
Anyone else have comments?
I just see it, I can't disagree with anything you said. I mean, that you described spectacular and you described it as a event space and like a holding room area. But I see it more of you talk about DARP, an extension of DARP, but I see it as an extension of this place, St. Albert Place.
Yeah.
This is a focal point for our community. And I would like to just sort of see this building using its kind of design flow into the park. And so that you can actually then start to build off of, so that goes into what you're saying around the children's festival. You're saying that goes into what's happening around other kind of community events. But I just see it just kind of naturally flowing from this building into that park. So, but for all the same reasons as you do. But I just think there should be some tie-in to this building.
Yeah, I always go to other cities. Edmonton has the big plaza in front. Calgary has a beautiful one, and we have a parking lot. So I envisioned this at the back of our building, but still as an extension of it.
Yeah, an extension or just something that flows into the fact that you could, and that's why where you have that pathway as it opens up. That's why I say block off the courthouse, because, nothing good ever happens in there. And then flow out of the building and incorporate the building into the kind of design.
Kelly?
Scotch tasting.
Scotch taste.
Kelly, go ahead.
The only comment I had is spectacular is generally the feel you get when you're in the area. I think that landscaping is far more important than a facility that's plopped there. So, I mean, they talk about trees in the edge and whatever, but I mean, it has to be like the trees around the seating area, maybe the leveling of, of different seating spaces or whatever with green around. So I would focus more on the green, and then we can add the events to make it spectacular, as Councillor Killick mentioned. But concrete and and a spray park there just doesn't make me feel like it be a place I'd ever really want to go. So. That's all.
And
You,
for
Russ.
me, it was a little bit about
Why don't you see it?
celebrating our river. Honestly, it's always been about the river. 'Cause that's what the original DART talked about. You go to Lions Park and there's that big hill. Can't see the river from Lions Park. So I always thought this about the river. And people would be on the trail system for their regular bike ride or whatever walk, and then they would come by Millennium Park and they would see, oh, there's a concert going on. Oh, there's like food trucks or whatever, but it's too cut off from what I value, which is the river, which makes St. Albert and our downtown so special. Yeah. Allie, join us. Do you have any thoughts?
You know, I think I've been very open. I'm happy with the plan that
Yeah.
administration put forward. I also just see it as an extension of the downtown kind of celebration zone. I'm not too fussed about packing 2,000 people into Millennium Park specifically, but certainly, you know, when you think of Snowflake Fest, when you think of Children's Fest, yes, in the greater party zone, absolutely, we want to welcome lots of people downtown. So as long as it's set up for, you know, all season use, I'm delighted. So that's what I want to see in that space.
I would say that that plaza you mentioned in Edmonton, there's so many communities that have a plaza and we don't. And I don't think that design we have creates that. So I think that we need to look at, say, what do we want to use the space for? And then backtrack to say how we're going to do it. And if it's going to be that we can hold multiple events, then you could have like I think in Mexico, they've got like a plaza in every community. You have 10 people, they've got a plaza there. And then they have like a gazebo, and then they have manicured where they have like benches, and then they have trees that provide shade for the benches. And then it's paved. And then outside of that, it could be non-paved, but then it provides that's a specific space for all their gatherings for the community there, for example. And so it has an elevated stature, but you're not going to require all the extra stuff like plumbing and stuff. There's just basic electrical there. But it's something from the nature of just from Edmonton or other things. We don't have that. And that's what you're saying is we have a parking lot across the way, but we don't have that space. And so that to me would make the most sense. If you, like Shelley said, like if we have the landscaping and it's someplace that you want to be, because people go to the river to connect with nature. Like that's one of your big thing is you're like near it without getting dirty. And so if you can have it where the landscaping takes it over, to me, those two buildings, both the ice rink and that other building, to me is just not where I would have gone. I would have gone with something that had a bit more of a gathering area, and you have it defined, this is the grassy area, this is the non-grassy area, and that way we can do things in the grassy area that we can't do in the grassy area, and vice versa. And then make the landscaping around that to where you want to sit there and read a book or watch the kids do something or whatever. That's how I would define it, if you could give me my ideal space. And then if I was to go further, I would take that space that's all floodplain with those trees. I don't know why we don't have a boardwalk there. I know that we have one in the boardwalk area for the Great Spruce Forest. And for whatever reason, people like to walk on a boardwalk, even if it's right beside a trail. It's so exciting when you're walking on wood, and they will do anything they can to walk on a boardwalk. So if you had to move the trail from where the paved thing is and had a boardwalk, and then define that other space so that it could be A, not as impacted if you got flooded, but B, really have it so you could use it outdoors, or if that's kind of how I would do it if it were me. So that's how I would love to envision it. But the challenge I have is that building that round, it costs a lot of money. I look at it, it's a lot for basically 1,300 square feet plus support. And I mean, if anybody want an outdoor refrigerated ice rink, it's me. But I also think that space with what it has is too small. And if you're going to skate in that, you're going to get dizzy because it's just too small of a lap. So I'm not sure what the feasibility of that little puppy the way it is, unless you're 4 and then everything's big. But if you're an adult, you can't skate there. So that's.
I'm sorry, what?
Okay. That's it. That's what if I was on the ice and then it would fall. But anyway, so that's the challenge I have with what we have right now. I understand the intention, but if you ask me, that's the element that we're missing downtown is we don't have a plaza area that has that level of appeal.
Dartmouth had a plaza out front.
That's what I was-
Waiting for Adrian.
In the DARP, the idea of the urban plaza was across,
Yeah.
it's connecting both sides of the street here. And that was, I was just doing some measurements on areas of it. It's still like when you add the two up, it's still less than what you're talking about over there by the in Millennium Park, like the green, the turf area right now. But that was envisioned as the urban plaza space, but it does not face the river. It's you're on the back.
We're talking about connections. And then you got, this is a focal point. You connect out to Millennium, you connect into Lions, go across, and then sooner or later, we're gonna connect up into the heritage site.
Yeah.
Right? And so you're gonna, I can just see the flow going that way. And
Giant Easter egg hunt.
yeah, you'll be too old for that by the time it happens. But that's where I kind of seen some sense of it moving off and flowing together into connecting into space that are culturally communities significant.
All right, we're good? Let's get to the next slide.
Yeah, we can totally do that. Just to kind of verbalize some of the things that we heard. Hearing some really clear themes around events of gathering as the primary driver for this space. Less desire potentially for spontaneous activation and more for come and use the space as you will. Hearing obviously views to the river being important, connection to SAP being important. Reflecting well. Missing anything major?
Yeah, I'd like to put a timeline in there. You got 2.5 years to get this.
All I need is a budget.
Well, you know what?
That we can do.
I joined
Trust me, I've been dealing with that timeline thing.
because you've got a council in front of you right now that seems to be very supportive of this. And you've got timeline to at least get, I whispered to Wes, just make a motion to a $16 million boring filing. Let's get this done.
And I've lost my.
That's what we're gonna have to do, right?
But because if you run out of time, you never know what happens.
I think it's really important to get in front and have this conversation because there's so many opinions. We want to make sure that we're representing.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Entirety. There we go.
But if you're looking for a point on that chart, just put
Okay,
My mouse.
got it. I wrote that down.
So Council Broad hit your point about timing. It's important.
Yeah.
Make sure we.
That's why I said earlier, I don't want to delay this. Yeah.
We do have we're taking advantage of captive audience to talk about where we're at now for timing is meeting expectations. Okay. Again, captive audience. So to the questions earlier, just to provide a little bit of what's currently planned. And then we'll talk about kind of where that's meeting or where that's falling down. For the indoor amenities, the pavilion is really oriented around a flexible space that has some sightlines to the river. Down the existing trail alignment. It has a kitchen space that's intended to support events and use of the facility through bookings. There's a leasable space which could be moved, but could be a cafe, could be a wares type shop, could be, a very small scale kind of supporting opportunity. And that really does add some life to the building and eyes on the site and activation that doesn't have to be paid for by the city. So there's some benefits that way. Mechanical and electrical storage, which isn't all that interesting, but very necessary when building a new building, and washrooms. We do have some washrooms at Lions, but if we are intending to gather large amounts of people, we do feel like more washroom facilities would be required to prevent some other unwanted activities on the site. This does also try to bring the outdoors in. So you see architectural features like curved glass, takes advantage of the orientation to get some passive heat and some sunlight in there, as well as some covered outdoor patio areas. We're seeing more and more demand for those type of spaces because of primarily climate change and people wanting to go outside, but it's 30, 32 degrees outside. So those shade respite areas have become more and more important as we've beer gardens moved in. For that, could totally do that there. It was proposed, I believe, to support bookings and event use of this space. It could be turned into something like a green room where you have that supporting space for performers and that kind of thing as well. So there's still a lot of flexibility. This is still really conceptual, but just to give you an idea of how it was broken out in the original concept. On the outdoor side, there is the water and ice feature. The idea behind it was that it could be shut off, so it becomes your stage. So that's why it doesn't have any projecting spray features. It's everything's coming from the ground, very similar to the Edmonton Ledge grounds. If you've been up in the top portion by the museum area there. So the idea was that hard surface would then support performers, support market stalls, so the water could be turned off and away you go. And then at the same time, because it's a concrete hard surface, it's quite easy to flood in the winter. And becomes your activation in the winter. It does propose to have a fire feature in the middle, which could also enable performances even while the skating is on, small concrete area in the middle. Obviously, skate change facilities, the little booths that you see are renderings from the artist for market stalls, so showing how the space could be used to extend farmers market and other events. And again, those covered seating areas becoming important. So the site layout is really focused on a little bit of maybe redundancy and pedestrian connectivity, really making sure you can move through this site to everywhere else in downtown you might want to go. As we've talked about already, the idea of these really high canopy plantings, which you can kind of see rendered here, where you're going to get that really green leafy shaded tunnel. Is kind of the idea. It's called an esplanade trail, if you want the fun term. It does, it's just a note that anywhere we do place the building does need to consider truck access if we want to support events. That's really, really important. And that may require some costs because the soil is quite soft. So we may actually have to upgrade some just turf areas so that it can take the weight of the trucks. And one thing that our team has really keyed in and the way that especially with the way the farmers market uses the site, is how can we tie in St. Anne Promenade, either through architectural design or landscaping design or just programming, because we do shut down that street often. It functions really, really well as an extension, a hard surface extension to the park. So we see some opportunity to make a better tie-in through this process as well with St. Anne Promenade. Not to say that it's not beautiful, but it can be used for events and things like that as well, where it's not currently used.
The Legion must be excited about having all these people downtown.
Oh, hopefully they are. So we do have another,
right.
So this is where we kind of wanted to talk with you about the things that were planned in light of the outcomes that you shared and the things that you shared about what you want for the site, where things are hitting the mark and where they aren't. I will share that in the agenda report, we provided you some suggestions for how you may want to move forward on this. What we're suggesting is that if major features are to be removed or added, we would ask that a motion be put forward. And that gives us kind of certainty that we have a cohesive council vision for what we're doing. And we're not taking things out to add it back in 6 months. The design features, where trails are, how much trees will remove, because we need more information, we'll take that as feedback. But big changes, we'd ask that you put forward a motion so we have that cohesive vision, if that's okay.
Amanda, could I just ask here then? Because Mayor Herron brought up the, kind of 4-season use and having something that's, the spray park used by, families kind of on a drop-in mode during the summer. And it's kind of shifted some of my initial thinking around that. But is there a simpler design that would, like, you've got it all together. You've got integrated splash park that you turn it off and then it just turns into a hard surface and then it turns into a skating rink. That to me sounds like pretty technically challenging piece of gear. I don't know what you want to call it. But is there a way that we could still accomplish those with kind of maybe like standalone solutions that would still meet the needs?
Yeah, so what I can offer, and I'll ask Mr. Saunders to jump in as well, is we've gotten a little bit more experience in the last couple of years with these types of systems. The system that is proposed here is quite simple. The types of spray nozzles, they're quite, the holes that they have are very, very narrow. So you just need to turn the water off. It's all very mechanically driven. There's no, electronically driven at this point. They're all on, you can put them on timers. They're very simple mechanically compared to what they probably were 10, 15 years ago. So in terms of, does it make it more complex to put it near the building? It actually does make it easier from my perspective, because then your mechanical systems are housed in one building as opposed to needing separate mechanical systems. But maybe I'll invite Mr. Saunders to.
No, I don't know much that, like there will be economies of scale by having your mechanical equipment probably in one of the bays of the building, like, yeah, there's. They support one another, the winter, summer ice splash pad, they are supportive of one another, so standalone in a separate area, you would lose those efficiencies to some degree.
Mike's just gonna volunteer with a hose. Splash the kids.
Yeah.
All you need is a hose and a tap.
Yeah, I got a Vegas, so. Kids will love.
With, I just back to the man's earlier comments around thinking of a larger park ecosystem downtown. So with Lion Park currently, there is the freezeway that we've got down there. So there are skating options. There's a playground there that draws families in. So I think, again, if we take that park ecosystem downtown and we hear what council said in terms of the kinds of experiences they'd like for us to be able to deliver in those spaces, there could be opportunities.
And isn't there a proposal to put a bit of a
I was just gonna say,
a splashy pond in front of the
So-
front?
with St. Albert Place renovations, the pond
Yeah.
will likely turn into a little bit of a splash pad.
So we could just have a fire pit for winter and.
Be on the grassy knoll with your super soaker.
So I think what I've heard, I think it'd be useful to understand, understand the priority, what the key features are. I think we've heard loud and clear that usable event space and sightlines to the river are probably the most preeminent considerations, but stand to be corrected. Obviously, landscaping to enable that underneath, and then sort of at the bottom become the big amenities. We're talking about buildings, bits and pieces, right? And so what does a vision of an all-season park look like if we lose the splash pad and the rink as an example? Great Nuns White Spruce type cover with the ability to have a bonfire? Is it maybe it's a bunch of other things, but I think that's kind of, if we get that understanding of those rough priorities, that would help.
Because as Mr. Cameron McCullough is alluded to, the park ecosystem downtown, is we also want to make sure that we're not duplicating what we have in other sites too, because we're cognizant in Lions, we have fire pits and barbecue pits, and we don't want to just duplicate that on the site next door. So it really is about making sure that we're thinking about how they all feed into each other and how they flow and how they fit together. They don't necessarily join cleanly and have big open space between them, so they can't operate as one site, but they do support each other and they do really build that park ecosystem. I think that's a great kind of term we can adopt for that.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point from my colleagues, is the reason we were very wanting to make sure Lions Park was considered in this is we could propose to remove a use from Lions to put in Millennium, and vice versa. We could propose to, and I'm throwing hypotheticals, put the splash park over into Lions, but take all the fire pits over into Millennium, or there's an opportunity there if there's desire, but it's maybe not on Millennium Park, but still a desire in that downtown core to meet that need or meet that desire. With conjoining the two projects, we're able to contemplate that a lot easier.
We're gonna go gather around the actual model, because that would help, because Lions Park is on there, right?
It doesn't show it completely, but we can get a sense. So this is kind of where I was going to walk through online in respect to Councillor Bermesky not being in the room, but we can certainly make our way over to the map, and I have markers and sticky notes, and we can do it that way if you'd prefer.
We're different color sticky notes on there, right?
So you might like.
Right.
We can certainly, is that okay for you, Councillor Bermesky? So you will be able to see.
Yes, I can see it. Thanks. Yeah.
Repeat. Go do this. Adrian had an idea, I gave him rest of it off, which is something.
Yeah.
We're enjoying our supper. Oh, I know. I haven't had mine yet. Look out there.
The technical.
Consistently was a need to open up more space to look towards river views. Basic minor design tweaks. We did hear some suggestions around changes to the amenities. We would ask for a potential motion to be brought forward, just so that we're very clear on what we're being asked to do. And that the whole of council is supporting whatever that might be, if it's removal of the water ice feature, if it's removal of the building. Those are kind of the big changes that we'd ask as we move towards the end of this meeting, if councillors want us to consider that, to bring that forward as a motion. Is that fair, Mayor Herron?
So motion be, bring us 3 proposals, a high, medium and a low for our consideration, because otherwise you're going to get a motion that says build this.
Yeah.
And it'll either pass or fail. And if it fails, we're back to square one.
And if we start doing this, I want you to release RFP for the concept tomorrow. I don't want, as I said, I don't want to pay this. So are these motions late?
It depends what is moved. We are kind of ready to make some quick changes, and maybe not tomorrow, but the RFP is almost ready to go.
Let's say the RFP went out, you got to bring us a concept plan, and at that point we say, we don't like the building as is. It's still a building, it's still the same spot, it still needs electrical, you know where to put those servicing. I feel like we can do that later.
Yeah, that's certainly possible. It would, to Mr. Saunders, it does increase our costs and increase our risk potentially with cost, just because we're bringing them down a path with the consultant and then potentially, indicating that there could be change, and it's hard for them to cost what that change could look like depending on how far they go. But I would say, looking to my colleague, that is certainly possible.
Possible. I think the building is still scalable. We're not at that last responsible. Yet to make a firm decision on it. So I think that we could shape an RFP to be able to provide that in concert to the remaining work.
Is it safe to say though, that, the current construct is probably the high end? Look at low and medium, something below that.
That could be the medium end.
So I'm more confused than I was before. So I understand you wanted a motion if you want to change something, but then you're saying you can also do stuff right now. So I don't know what I'm doing. I don't even know what I can do or what we were just.
Describe what the RFD is going to get us.
So the RFP as it's currently crafted will update the concept plan based on what we heard today. But keeping to anything that's, within the context of the conversation. It will get us to detailed design for site servicing and trail connections. And that's kind of as far as it goes.
And the geotechnical, isn't it?
And all the technical studies that decisions. So it doesn't do any design on the building. It just gets the servicing to the site, assesses where we need upgrades and things, because the downtown has some servicing deficiencies.
Does it include any heritage or indigenous assessments?
We are going to look at that. It is potentially a requirement. Yeah.
So with the RFP coming forward, and you guys are going to make it so it's a bit more flexible. Is it possible then for us to get an updated design that says this is the flexible components and then provide us with the details? And from there, we could have a different discussion, because I don't personally want to be like, my answer is the right answer. I mean, obviously it is, but I don't want it to be that my answer is the right answer. I would like to see, like as Wes said, to see some options that would work within the confines of how you're servicing it. So that way it wouldn't necessarily be delayed for as far as what you're trying to move for step one. But then if we do need to make changes, we could see what we could actually do as an alternative. Is that possible?
Yeah, certainly we would. So we do have it in your package as well as in a normal process, we would just proceed. we did want to have this conversation about what is council's expectations for, you know, endorsement or approval or further review of the conceptual plan prior to going forward. I would just say that if we are being asked to come back with multiple concepts, we may just have to come back for more design dollars, depending on how far our dollars stretch. Because there will be additional costs if we come back with 3 concepts instead of 1. But I think that's manageable within the scope of the RFP and the funding that's been approved. It just may, you know, we might get to 90% instead of 100% on some elements. And, you know, I don't see that as a huge concern as long as council isn't concerned. But an awareness there. So that was kind of our last question is in a normal park development process, we just kind of go. Does council want us to come back and is it with 1 concept or 3 concepts or what is the desire from committee on that?
My desire is no concepts. Like because I don't want to delay this. At least not at this point.
I don't think this would be delayed. So let's assume that you could do it without delaying it, Mayor, because I think that the intention of the RFP was to do it without. Not going to delay the RFP. We're going to come back and see what the 3 concepts are within the confines of the current servicing plan, right?
It will slow the process down a little bit just to have that conversation does take a little bit of time. Not that it's a significant barrier, but just an awareness that it does cause a slight delay in the process. But
Shelley?
significant.
Sorry,
I still had one question about.
We can't hear you. I don't know what's going on.
it's not muted.
No.
Not muted.
Hold on, Shelley. We got technical. Try again. Yep, we're good.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, just one further question I had is with regard to the spray ice, how much of that building are you considering like change rooms?
Let me just pull up the image here. Just washrooms, no specific change rooms.
So where would they put on
Area.
Well, you talked about changing skates and I mean, that's the thing that I find most at fault with this plan is like, you know, people running in and out, towels, swimsuits, changing skates, like it just seems really messy. So, I mean, not that you don't want an attractive like spray fountain type feature, but when you start having spray parks and skates, all of a sudden it changes into a recreational facility instead of a beautification facility, so to speak.
Yeah, certainly can understand that. So in this building, there is no change room, just washrooms. An open area space. I believe, and Adrian, please correct me if I'm wrong, the skate change was envisioned for outside, so the skate tiles in this covered seating area, not a space indoors for skate change.
Okay. And it would essentially save us $2 million if we eliminated that, correct?
No, the water ice feature is a portion of that $2 million.
I need to know the number on that because I just don't see any value in it. I don't know what the rest of council thinks on that one. But I mean, if it's anywhere close to a couple $1 million, then I definitely don't see the value. So
if you could bear with me a moment, I can look at our most recent cost estimate. I just need to pull up a different document.
Excuse me.
Apologies, my computer is freezing.
And to do my best.
and then my other concern is if this, you know, function or the ice or whatever is, you know, is broken down or out of service, then you got this big area kind of blocked off, you know, right in the center of the park too.
Councilor Mansky, I think that space could also be used for like concerts. It could be a hard skate space where people could still walk on it, even if we didn't have the water or ice on it. You'd still be able to use the space as part of the park.
Okay. I would really probably like to see a council vote on that amenity, you know, if we could. Because I mean, maybe I'm the only one, you know, Councillor Killick's mentioned a few things, but I mean, definitely, you know, if majority rules, I won't talk about it anymore, but.
Sorry, I apologize for the delay. I don't have it with escalation and contingency, but the water ice feature and including a recirculation system is estimated about 500,000.
Okay,
So I'll draft up a notice of motion and try and get some input, but it would be something like, please advise what the cost would be without the spray park rink as,
That just could be an
Oh,
IR.
500,000, because at one point it included all the lands.
The landscaping.
but then we could vote on that and say, is that something that council wants or not to,
Can't we just do a straw vote right now?
we can. Yeah,
Because,
I believe you do an official vote though, like this is
Mhm.
like,
but as Shelley said, if that's not the will of majority, why are we waiting? Why are we delaying?
well, I'm just saying there should be, let's just do a motion. You want to do a motion and vote on the spray park and vote on the indoor space? Then
I thought we did that during budget.
Yeah.
Like,
And this isn't council's committee.
And I just don't want to, I mean, I just don't want to vote individually. And I think that would just mess up the staff even more. Like if we just started, I'll vote for this, but I'm not going to vote for washrooms or no, look, I don't want to have this and I don't want to have that. I mean, it just, that's,
yeah.
I just
I
thought,
think how we get out of it.
yeah, I know, but I was just trying to think of, right now, I thought we were just looking at going ahead with the RFP, you got me.
Guys, sorry about that.
And then the actual, rest of the actual and what's in it follows, right? I mean, we need to get,
I haven't seen the detailed design
we
yet.
need to get the amenities going, the underground, some of the other, that is critical no matter what we put in it. Right? I mean, if we don't put a building, we don't necessarily need sewer water, but you know what? Eventually, we may scale it that we do. So, but we need to get the foundation piece first, and that's what I thought we were just here for.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you're right, Ken.
I'm prepared to put forward a motion for debate for later, and I'll even tell you what it'll be, which would be that administration provide council with 3 alternative detailed design options for review within the current servicing plan. One would include the current one. So that's what I would expand the detailed servicing plan to the 3 options is what it would.
I'd just like to clarify, the 337,000 is not sufficient.
Oh, sorry. Oh,
So
if that was coming, that was coming, yeah.
That's in a later phase. There is not sufficient funding to design that building.
What are we doing for the 337? We're doing the servicing plan.
Servicing technical studies and some interim landscaping improvements, trails and site furnishings and costing updates. So it is really around that first phase of getting the site more functional. And maybe I can, if I can have council's indulgence, go into the phasing as it's currently sitting. And that might help some of the understanding.
Okay.
Sorry, I just don't want anyone to expect me to give them a building design in 3 different levels. So currently this is 5 phases. The first phase is to, again, update that concept plan to a preliminary design, a site servicing detailed design, trail connections, landscaping and site furnishings. So that's the funding that's been approved to date. And that's really to bring the site more functional. You go out there on the weekend, nobody's really using it. Nobody really knows what it is. So get some of those core elements in place and get it ready for future investment. So phase 2.
So I'm going to say where I'm struggling is site servicing detailed design. So if we were to not have water and ice, would that not affect the site servicing? So don't we have to Councillor Hughes's comment, we have to land that we either want that or not. And then if we were to push the building back and just like deeper into the site as we kind of proposed, would that not also change site servicing detail?
Yeah, so what we
And if
were,
we just built a building with washrooms and much simpler amenities in it, so we kind of have to make these, like we have to give you clear direction of what we want so that you can go with, say, you know, the drains stop here or they stop 100 meters over there.
there's a couple of different ways that we can go about it. We can plan the site servicing based on some basic assumptions about what might be built there, but bring it only to the property line. We don't have servicing to the property line for all services and finish design there. and then connect to it later once we know more. In an ideal world, we do know what we're building towards and where it is in the site can change because we can modify
I
that.
don't want to leave here today without giving you clear guidance as to what council collectively agrees on. And then we can get on with site servicing, saying this is where the building is going to go and this is the amenities that are going to go with it. And I feel like I'm leaving you guys hanging without clear direction. I apologize, but
Maybe if I can just summarize, so if we move forward today with the next phase of work, it's based on the concept plan that we have. So including the building, water spray of some kind, there is some flexibility in there to exactly where it is and those kinds of things, but it is assuming that we move forward, maybe changing how many trees we have, trail alignments, but it is the program that we presented. If you would like to change the program we presented, you don't want a building or you don't want water, ice, then yes, we wouldn't, that would be good to know now before we move to the next phase, correct, Amanda?
Yes, and we could bring it back at the conceptual level and have this conversation with 3 different options brought forward. It will cause some delays in the process and will incur costs to do so. But it's certainly possible.
Start the geotechnical studies prior to getting that done.
Yeah, we can certainly start some of the technical studies, but the detailed design process couldn't proceed until we knew kind of where we were going.
But you couldn't do that anyway until you know the geotechnicals are really.
Yeah, it does, it is
It's
a-
servicing that's implicated, right?
Yeah.
Like the bottom line is all the other stuff. It's the servicing.
Study.
And if there's nothing built anywhere, then we don't need to service the land. If it's, even if just a washroom, then presumably you need to service it to some degree.
And there's still the storm.
Yeah.
Component, right.
So, I mean, regardless of what final design we may look at, I mean, what would be wrong with laying the foundation of even planning ahead? So I mean, we may, if we build water and servicing and we end up not building a water park or a building, well, we know maybe another council will be able to. So why can't we agree on that? This is just to get it servicing to the property. And then then we can start moving the puzzle pieces around as to what we want with very minimal costs. That's what I thought we were doing today, not actually determining where and what we need to have. We just need to, let's get servicing to it. And then we can build off of or remove or phase it in as we see it actually fitting in with budget or with what we can possibly do. But fundamentally, I'd rather get the servicing
Yeah.
now.
So I'm super frustrated right now because this has gone completely off the rails. The intention was to let you guys hear a little bit of concerns about trees and sightlines.
Yeah.
We have approved project charter.
Mhm.
We have money in the budget to go on this phase 1. We're talking years in the future when we put in buildings. And so I'm with you, Ken. Let's get it ready for spectacular and we can scale it back when it comes to the time. So,
That's what I'm saying.
We can certainly do it that way. It's again, a conversation around expectations for project delivery and if that meets your expectations, then that is certainly something that we can do.
That doesn't stop anybody putting a motion forward down
budget time. Yeah.
wherever, like,
I get another thing you had, sorry, Ken, did you have more? I interrupted.
no, I'm just saying, I'm sorry, I've got a hungry dog and
Yeah, you asked, I think I saw a question about when
too.
points back with county. So what I'm hearing is probably frequently, right, after this first phase. Yeah,
But we'll keep coming back. I think we've heard loud and clear sightlines, usable space is a key issue that will indicate or impact, right, the next phase we look at it. We'll bring the servicing to the property line and then it can be sort of a Taj Mahal down to nothing. Those decisions can be made.
I think one of the biggest issues, or not issues, but consideration is the location of a building or I'm feeling like there's consensus on that one area.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
I think that's going to allow us to proceed with the servicing design because we're going to know it's in that area, so that can be led in that direction still, regardless of.
And honestly, if we delay the building of the building for 10 years, because the next
Yeah.
councils from years from now will have the servicing ready to go. When they feel that it's affordable.
And the trees will be taller.
I don't think there's anywhere else in the land that you can actually build it anyway.
No,
Because
that's
of all the other limitations.
Yeah, with all the
It's
other
like-
limitations, you gotta take it to their one or two corner.
Cedar and.
You don't need, well, you.
Yeah, do that later.
Already, is it?
So then for council, we're going to release the RFP as it stands, with the understanding the guidance received today and that goes on, we'll come back.
Okay, I need a motion to receive this information.
So move that there.
Great. All those in favor? Renetsky, you can just put your hand up. This is just for information, Shelley.
Okay, but every time we just vote for information, then it just goes forward the way it's planned. So
Well,
we haven't
you have
really,
every opportunity to change the direction. That's, yeah. But the information is the information. Kind of hard to dispute that.
well, I understand that, but every time we vote for it, we've done this conversation and nothing's changed. We're just saying, go ahead with your plan with the information.
Respectfully not, Council Bramatsky. All this is trying to do is what I've said. This will get the servicing going. This will allow the RFP. If you want to make your amendments to change the plan by removing the spray park or removing the ice, you can do that at any particular time.
And that wasn't happening today.
And that wasn't going to happen today. So that's the whole point. The whole point was just to give some general feedback and they've heard all of us loud and clear. That's all it was. So please put forward your motion.
Okay, just.
Not now. I'm not the mayor.
Voting on receiving information.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just questioning why there's alternative choices, in our paperwork that was.
I actually don't have the package in front of me because my computer's not
Well,
working.
that would be if we wanted to do anything, but I didn't open it up there.
I think that if we, Shelley, I think that if you want to put forward something or anyone does, we now have had a discussion, so there's the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, always is.
As far as today goes, the intention wasn't to dramatically change it today. It was to give us a blueprint of where it is. And if now we want to change something, knowing the parameters, we can make motions to make that change. If you want to vote against it for information, you always have that right to vote no against anything you want.
Okay, so page 6 of our agenda, alternative and implications considered, that's for future is what you're saying then.
I don't have it sitting in front of me. I don't have it, sorry.
What are the alternatiors?
Yeah, there's several alternatives and implications considered in our agenda. Page
Well, you
6.
can move the alternate.
Vote against it.
Information and opportunity, if council was ready to provide more solid direction today, we wanted to make sure that that information was available and presented, but certainly it doesn't have to be done today by any means.
Or to our alternative.
So Shelley, are you still voting against for information?
Well, yeah, I will in this case. I know it doesn't make sense, but every time we vote just for information, it just goes forward. So I'll stick with my no vote.
That's not true.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.